Marvel Snap constantly feels like it's all about whatever's new. It's the OTA balance patch, it's whatever deck is popular on Reddit, or whatever the meta says from another creator. It's all about the flashy things of the moment. But the truth is, none of that matters if you don't understand the fundamentals. Because remember, while creators come and go, and deck archetypes come and go, and popular cards come and go, the fundamentals never change. So today I'm going to give you 10 rules that you can just keep in your back pocket at all times. They are unbreakable rules of Marvel Snap. These are rules that players live by, whether it's day 1 of the season or day 30 of the season. You're still trying to climb to infinite, or you're trying to climb, you know what I'm trying to say, trying to climb to number 1. So once you master these, no matter what new card drops this week, you're going to be ahead of the curve. Rule number 1, priority beats power. If you don't know, priority is who's basically going first every single turn. Understanding how to mitigate that priority is more important than the size of the cards you have, because you could be playing a Scar deck or a Sauron deck, and it's just ramping out all these big cards, but if you're not protecting them, priority is going to fail you because you're going first, and then your opponent just Shang-Chi's one of those cards, and now you're weak in that lane. That's why many of the players who make it to infinite fully understand the balance of how to manipulate priority and when to keep it and when to lose it. If you have a card like Alioth, for example, priority is your best friend. Or if you're playing a Ronin deck, you want to play Maximus later on because of how priority is going to work, because then the Ronin is going to grow. So sometimes you want to react, and sometimes you want to be ahead of the curve. Understanding when to move that priority is important for that reason. So don't just ask, am I winning the board or am I winning the lane? Ask, am I winning the priority game? That is always going to be more important. Rule number 2, retreat early. Look, if the odds are bad, just get out. I am guilty of this more than I care to admit. But remember, losing 1 cube 10 times is way better than losing 8 cubes twice. Now, I know most players think of this and they know I should get out of here. And in theory, they know they should have left. But ego, not the location, ego is an incredibly powerful thing in Snap. And those who climb in infinite have no shame in retreating. Understanding discipline in those moments is what will win you more cubes over time. Rule number 3, snap it when you got it. If you've got the goods, you've got the combo, you've got the confidence in the board state, snap. Snapping on turn 6 doesn't scare anyone. There's a reason many people call it a boomer snap. But snapping on turn 2 or turn 4, that puts a different kind of pressure, because now you're telling your opponent the engine of my deck is running. Now you've put that proactive pressure on your opponent and said, listen, you're either going to fold your hand right now, give me the little bit, or risk big time, especially if you're not ready yet. I use the terminology that Snap and poker are very much associated, and I'm going to do a video fully explaining that in more detail in the coming weeks. But just remember this, the earlier you make snaps, the more pressure they generally apply. That doesn't mean always snap early, but if you've got it, snap it. Rule number 4, curve is king. If you're building a deck, you need to build a clean curve into that deck. Now, does that mean every turn has to have a card? No, but you have to maximize what you're doing with that energy each turn, even if you're choosing to float it. Because if you're choosing to float, that can be great if you have a card like Sunspot on the board. But no matter how much you float, if you don't have a solid plan for how to fill the curve, including that, rather than in substitute of, you might end up, needing to go back to some of these rules. A deck that is able to curve out and fill the energy appropriately will almost always beat a clunky hand every time. Consistency is what wins season after season, not high rolling. So build for the curve. Rule number 5, respect locations. Look, y'all gotta stop blaming RNG. Locations are the 13th card in your deck in any average Marvel Snap game. So instead of whining about them, featured location or not, if you want to be an infinite player, you gotta use them. If Central Park hits the board and squirrels go everywhere, you've gotta adapt. If Fisk Tower is active on the board, bait your opponent into playing into that lane. Locations don't necessarily decide games all by themselves, but your reaction to them, that has a much bigger effect. Hey, this is the halfway mark, so I think it's the obligatory, like and subscribe and make people want to be like, yo, I want to come back here. Rule number 6, tech slots beat net decks. Always run tech. I've talked about this in my deck building guide. You should have some way to combat your opponent in every deck you play, because copying the latest deck, it works. It's great to a certain degree, until all of a sudden you start running into its counters. That's why you see top players constantly playing cards like Enchantress, Cosmo, Shang-Chi, Killmonger, etc. More often than not, those cards win more games than the actual engine of the deck itself, depending on the deck, obviously. So don't sleep on the importance of your tech slots when you are taking another person's deck. Rule number 7, don't tunnel on one lane. It's surprising how many newer players especially go all in to help truly secure a lane early. So they'll start pouring extra power before turn 6 to pre-secure the lane so they can work on something else later. More so, a strategy you might want to geared more towards is spreading the pressure across 2, maybe 3 lanes a little earlier on. That way you have the ability to pivot at your leisure rather than what your opponent is forcing you to do, which might be exactly into their game plan. So don't be afraid to keep your opponent guessing. It's going to steal more lanes and then more cubes than you're going to lose. Rule number 8, count outs. Know your opponent's outs. So if you think you're ahead and you're going, I've got this, I've got the combo, you also need to be asking, what card beats me here? They're clearly playing Brood on 5. Does the Surfer, if they have it, beat me in this lane? I'm going up against negative. Do they still have Mystique to work with? Does their deck have the flexibility to run Shang-Chi? And if so, do I lose to it? Even in new versions of Shang-Chi like right now. Getting to Infinite and climbing in Infinite is very much so built on the idea of not just playing your hand, but more importantly, playing their hand just as equally. Rule number 9, manage your resources. Every part of your hand when you go into a game is a resource. Every cost is a resource. Every power is a resource. Every ability is a resource. It's not just, am I using all of my energy? It's knowing how and when to mitigate that out. So if you're going to float energy, does that float energy benefit you long-term or even short-term? Does playing out of the curve benefit you for the purposes of priority, or does it just hurt you because you're trying to use the energy to make sure you've got it? Shadow King on turn 2 is a perfect example of that. Treat every number and every ability as its own resource, because every one of those absolutely matters as a resource in any given match. Lastly, cube rate is better than win rate. I just went over this in the most recent video as well, and I want to re-emphasize that here, because knowing how your cubes will come to your account will always be more important than the rise in your win percentage, because you can have a lower win percentage, but a higher cube count, and cumulatively allow yourself to climb even higher than somebody else with a higher win rate. I'm always going to bring up Mr. Negative as the perfect example of this. So stop chasing win rate and start chasing cubes. So here's the truth. These 10 rules never change. Snap is going to keep releasing cards, the meta is going to constantly be shifting, but if you understand and master these fundamentals, none of that will matter because you'll always be in control. And the best part is, once you truly know them, you'll start identifying the mistakes in your own gameplay, which allows you to fix them and then unlock more cubes, more ranks, and a lot more fun, let's be honest. So as always, if this helped, continue the conversation down in the comments. Share another fundamental that you think is important in the world of Marvel Snap. I can't wait to read them, can't wait to talk about them, and I can't wait to continue this conversation with all of you. Thank you so much. And as always, see you next time.